Ready to start? Good morning, good morning. Welcome to our first Q&A session. My name is Marlen Rodriguez-Wolfe, and I am the CEO of the Ukulele Kids Club. I'm so happy to be here with you today because we're going to be answering some of the questions we've received regarding our Ukuleles for Ukraine campaign. Now, we're using an interesting streaming platform that is allowing us to stream on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and also we're trying to stream on Instagram. So if I can't get to some of your questions, or if you see any questions in the comments that go unanswered, we'll make sure to monitor those in the chat and then get back to you either through social media, or if you leave us your email, we'll be happy to contact you. But today we're here basically to talk about Ukuleles for Ukraine. As you know, we are mostly known for our work in medical settings with hospitalized children and medically fragile children. And so this new focus of supporting children that have been impacted by war and that are now refugees is a new focus for us. So we wanted to make sure that you guys who are our followers and our top supporters know exactly what music therapy and the ukulele can do in this community and how exactly you can help us help these kids in these conditions. So we received a lot of wonderful questions that I have written down here, and I'm going to attempt to answer them to the best of my ability. And again, I'm sorry if I don't get to all of the questions that appear during this live stream, but again, we'll try to answer those as they come in later on. So one of the first questions that we've received, and we've tried to lump them together in terms of category, is what kind of programs are you running on the ground? So typically, you guys know our mission of transforming lives through music by donating ukuleles to medically fragile children in hospitals. And we do this in partnership with music therapists. This new initiative, Ukuleles for Ukraine, is the exact same structure. So we are partnering with music therapists that are working on the ground in shelters across Europe, and we're attempting to establish communication pathways with Ukrainian music therapists that have remained in the country. We're doing this in collaboration with the World Federation of Music Therapy. The World Federation of Music Therapy handles advocacy and awareness for music therapy, the profession as a whole, all around the world. And they do this through partnerships with the different music therapy associations in every country. We'll learn a little bit more about the Music Therapy Federation next year, and next week, and we'll see exactly how they do this process. But once the Federation helps us identify programs that are working with the Ukrainian refugees in different countries, then we outreach to the therapists and engage in a partnership. So same as we do in the hospital settings, we will partner with music therapists that are working in the shelters, get information from them as to how many children they're working with and potentially how many ukuleles they would need to support those children. And then we begin the donation process. We ship directly to the sites to avoid any complications with having to have one person distribute ukuleles for us. So we fundraise to be able to purchase the instrument. We develop programs and learning materials for the therapists and the children, and then we deliver those to the music therapist that's working with the child. Because the music therapist is in the community and is actually physically on the ground, they know best how to implement the ukulele in a way that's helpful for the child. So we really do place a lot of trust on the field of music therapy to be able to deliver this idea of how to use an ukulele to support a child that is experiencing, all sorts of psychosocial complications from the situation that they find themselves in. So the program is just like our typical program in hospitals, but in a shelter, in a refugee type of situation. One of the other questions we received is why now? The war's been going on, since February, and we saw other Ukuleles for Ukraine initiatives pop up. And while, when things started to happen, we immediately wanted to respond again. I think all of us in the organization had this pull for how can we help and how can we, roll up our sleeves and support these kids. But at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that our impact was lasting and that the way that we supported these children was through music and through our mission. So to set up those avenues of communications and partnerships with music therapists takes a little bit of time, and it's still ongoing. So we wanted to make sure that when we said we were helping Ukrainian kids and Ukrainian refugees, it was through ukuleles and through music therapists and in a way that is sustainable over time. So we hope that you're proud of the fact that we took our time in developing this program and this initiative, because we really want to make sure that the way we're supporting the kids is with music and with our belief that music can really help them during these times. Welcome everybody that's tuning in. We're just attempting to answer some of the questions that we've received, and all of them are wonderful. If you're not able to tune in live right now, you can always catch the recording. So let's move on with the questions. One of them says, can you elaborate on the relationship between bringing the children comfort and ukuleles? So what's the relationship between comfort and ukuleles? Not a small question, I would say, right? We know, because we've all experienced it in some way, that music can bring you comfort. It can elicit hope. It can elicit feelings of positivity or even negativity, depending on the type of music. So music has a real impact on how we feel. Therefore, making music also has that ability of influencing your state of mind, your emotions, and how you feel overall. The idea in the Ukulele Kids Club is that children are able to make their own music through having an instrument of their own, so they can access this ability of music making to induce particular emotions whenever they choose to. So for example, I as a musician or as a music therapist know that if I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I can take 20 minutes out of the day to sit and play my ukulele or play on my piano. And that action of engaging in music making will help me process the stress that I feel. It's a relationship between the focus that's required to play the instrument, but also the natural effects that making music gives to your body. So when we say that ukuleles bring comfort, it's not necessarily just the ukulele, getting an ukulele and feeling immediately comforted. It's you engaging in the music making with the instrument, and therefore having that be a comforting activity that you can engage in. So we can say that for many different feelings. We can say that about hope, we can say that about resiliency, and we can say that about comfort. But again, it's about the active music making situation and how the ukulele allows you to engage in that music making, even if you're not a full-blown musician. Can you give us an update on the situation as you're working on this campaign? Awesome question. So as I mentioned, this is an evolving situation around the world, and so therefore it's an evolving response. We've learned a lot from our partnerships with the World Federation of Music Therapy and their Global Crisis Intervention Commission as to how to respond to crises that are evolving and ever-changing in nature. So the first phase of this was to set up the communication with the associations and the therapists that are on the ground. The second phase is to be able to start delivering the aid. And the third phase will be to stop, reassess, and see how the logistics of that process are. Since we're dealing with different countries and different shipping requirements and customs protections, we will have to stop and reassess how that process is going. However, in the phase that we are now, in the making sure that everything is pre-approved and it will be able to occur, we're feeling very confident that the aid will be able to be delivered to countries outside of Ukraine. So to Poland, to Germany, to the UK, to Turkey potentially. And the main challenge in setting up this campaign has been, how do we get the donations inside Ukraine itself? Because we know that there are many music therapists that have remained in the country, and a lot of them are actually still working with kids that are in the country. So that's, I think, one of the most challenging things that we're facing right now is how can we set up systems to deliver the aid to the children that have remained inside the country. And we'll be updating you guys on that process as it becomes clearer how we're doing that. All right. Awesome questions. I'm really excited to be sharing all of these things with you. I hope that you guys are inspired by the things that we're doing and that you know that you can help us in this goal. Our goal is to be able to support 1,000 kids, which, as you can imagine, is just a drop in the bucket, but we have to start somewhere. And so with that 1,000 child mentality in mind, we urge you guys to go to ukulelesforukraine.com, make a donation of any amount, because any amount, even if it's $1, $5, $10, $1,000, everything helps bring the aid to the kids in need. Right now, we've received requests for support from mostly Poland. In Poland, Poland, the country, has accepted about 4.4 refugees out of the over 7 million that have fled the country. And if you want to check on these numbers, you can always go to the UN data website. I'll drop it in the post later on so you guys can see the numbers as they evolve. So we really want to make sure that we're supporting all of the programs that we get requests from, and at least 1,000 children to start off with. So please make a donation, drop whatever you can in the website, ukulelesforukraine.com. All right, moving along. So when you reach the fundraising goal, how many children will you be able to impact? Well, there you go. I've just answered that question. So our fundraising goal was set up to support 1,000 children, and it accounts for the logistics of, purchasing the instrument, manufacturing the instrument, shipping the instrument to the different locations, developing materials that we print and send to the kids, because we know that the majority of them will not have internet access, and being able to incorporate a support system for the therapists and the programs that we're going to be working with around the world. As you can imagine, language has been a barrier. We've had to very quickly learn how to use Google Translate to communicate in Ukrainian, in Polish, and in other languages that we may receive requests from. But we're really committed to making sure that things are done in a way that the therapists really receive a real benefit from our support. We want to make sure that the materials that they receive are able to be implemented right away, and that they don't even have to worry about, how do I find instruments for these kids? How do I go about introducing them to this instrument? We're here to be their partners in delivering this aid. Are the therapists on site with the children? So yes, how music therapy and migrant care works around the world is that a music therapist will be hired by either an influx care facility, a shelter, a habituation site. There's different names for the places in which refugees get received into the host country. And there's obviously different situations and different ways that they can experience, a reception. So the music therapist is typically hired by the site, and they become an employee, either full-time or contracted by the site, to deliver sometimes what we call as psychological first aid. So music therapy is one of the programs that the shelters will have to make sure that the children and the families are feeling supported. And it's really a wonderful initiative to have music therapy in these sites, because it's one of the ways that we can celebrate the identity of the children and the families in these centers by utilizing music from their culture, possibly instruments from their culture. The music therapist is able to provide a sense of celebrating where you're coming from, but also supporting you in your acculturation or acclimation into your new host country. So music therapy and migrant care, while it is an evolving field, has been done for many years in many different countries. Some of the countries that have been doing music therapy and migrant care include Colombia, which received many, many Venezuelan refugees for many years now. The United States, who receives many Latin American immigrants going up seeking refuge and asylum. Turkey, that received many Syrian refugees quite a few years ago. Germany also receives many immigrants from around the world. And any other country, I think Uganda also receives many African, from Central Africa, immigrants. So again, all of this information about the migratory patterns of immigrants and migrants can be found in the UN Refugee Agency, and I encourage you all to learn more about that. And for music therapy and migrant care, stay tuned to the World Federation of Music Therapy and their communications about how music therapy can really support for these migrant crises around the world. But yes, the therapists are on site with the children, and they are the main avenue by which children receive music therapy. And through our collaboration with them is how we are able to then have our programs impact the majority of children that are around Europe, working with these music therapists on site. Let's see. So what have you learned from this campaign as CEO? So I think that one of the main things that I've learned is that people, when they see one another in struggles, they want to help. There is an innate goodness in all of us to want to help people that are suffering or struggling. And that has made me just incredibly proud that we are able to respond to this crisis. we, as an organization, decided that while this is technically outside of the scope of medically fragile children, we were impacted enough by knowing what these children and families and mothers were experiencing that we wanted to do our part. And that just gave me tremendous amounts of hope that it's not black and white in this world, that we can decide to shift focuses and shift missions depending on a big global crisis, and that we can say, yes, music can help in this setting as well, and music can help in that setting, and music can help in this setting. It's all about how you go about setting up your relationships and your partners. So again, thank you to the World Federation of Music Therapy. Thank you to Ukuleles by James Hill. James has very graciously donated his Ready Steady Ukulele method book to send to the children. And thanks to some wonderful volunteers, Natalka and Taras, for translating that book into Ukrainian. The kids will be able to receive their ukulele and then a method book by James in Ukrainian that they can then use to start making music right away. So I'm kind of seeing some of the comments here on Facebook and on Twitter, so I will try to respond them. So Julia says, is there at all an opportunity for teachers in the US to provide beginner lessons over Zoom without a therapist on site, just a coordinator? Thank you so much for offering that, Julia. That is a wonderful suggestion. The reality is that we would have to take that as a case-by-case basis, depending on the site. As you can imagine, a lot of the sites don't have infrastructure for laptops or computers or internet access that would be required to provide a Zoom lesson, because a lot of the shelters and sites are just emerging as the crisis evolves. Some of the sites that we support in the US are influx facilities where it's really pop-up shelters and there's no building infrastructure that could support internet access, for example. Meanwhile, others, like we've received from Norway, are repurposed buildings that they've turned into schools that are now housing and educating the Ukrainian children. So they would have a situation where they could potentially have internet access. So it really would depend on the case. And at this point, I don't think that we're ready to say, yes, you can volunteer to teach the kids. Possibly in phase 2, when we've established the programs that we're supporting and we're seeing a little bit about how the crisis is evolving, then we could offer our UKC home program, which basically does that it attempts to provide support through Zoom, through online learning, and to do that in their language, I think would be really wonderful as well. So thank you, Julia, for that suggestion. So Dr. Indra is here, and she's saying it's a privilege to collaborate with UKC, and of course we feel the same way. She's saying she hopes many will donate towards this worthy cause to support traumatized Ukrainian kids and teens that have been displaced because of the war. They really need the global community support, and I couldn't agree more. She's looking forward to having our conversation next week. So yes, please tune in every Thursday from here until July 8th. We have 2 more sessions coming up. The first one is with me, obviously. The next one is with Dr. Indra, who will share a little bit more about how the World Federation goes about responding to these crises. And then the third one is diving a little bit deeper into music therapy and migrant care with Deniz Kora, who set up a lot of the refugee support programs for Syrian refugees in Turkey. So the last question that I have here is, how can we, the community, support you? And as you can imagine, it's just what I've been sharing. Dropping a donation at ukulelesforukraine.com, sharing about the You Can campaign, inviting your friends and family to make a donation is really the main way that you can support us right now. Because I've shared with you that this is a new component to our mission, this is something that we need to have a sort of capital campaign for. We need the funds raised from this campaign to be able to deliver on this mission, because it is a brand new situation that evolved in February. So your support is what's going to allow us to fulfill this promise of helping Ukrainian refugees. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling very hopeful in the fact that our ukuleles are going to be in the hands of kids that need to express themselves, that need to utilize music as an avenue for creating hope and comfort for themselves. Children have a tremendous sense of agency, and anybody who's ever worked with kids or who's a mom or a dad or a caregiver knows that children are, resilient in their own right. And if we just provide them the tools and the learning materials to be able to self-soothe, self-regulate with guidance, they can accomplish wonderful things. So I hope that we'll, receive lots of support from all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you weren't able to catch live recording or the live stream, I hope that you'll catch the recording. And please feel free to drop any questions in the post. We'll be happy to answer them as we can. And don't forget to tune in next week at the same time on the same platforms. And again, have a great day. Thank you so much for supporting the Ukulele Kids Club. Goodbye.